Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisum, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on the show today. I have a very special episode because a few weeks ago, I got to sit down with the amazing Ginny Owens. And you might know Ginny from some of her top hits, like If You Want Me To, Free, and I Want to Be Moved. And she's just amazing. She's released 11 full albums, 3 EPs. She was named Gospel Music Association's New Artist of the Year. She's won 3 Dove Awards, multiple ASCAP Awards, and she's sold over 1 million records over the course of her career. She was just out of Belmont College and was signed immediately to Michael W. Smith's Rocketown Records, and she has since become an independent artist, but is still very, very popular and has won a loyal following worldwide. Ginny is deep and fun, and we laughed and we talked about how she cooks with the Instapot and how life as a blind person really can be doable. She's just amazing. She's an inspiration, and I think you're really going to enjoy this episode of the podcast with Ginny Owens. Well, welcome to the show, Ginny. It's so great to meet you today.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. It's so great to be here.
Are you kidding me? Followed your music for a long, long time. Of course, your signature songs. And as I was telling you pre-show, I do a lot of research on the artist and guests that we have on. And there's so much music out there. You've been recording for 20 years.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, so
17 and a half.
Awesome.
I'm just kidding.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. But I mean, I am absolutely blown away. The discography, the depth of your music. So what an honor to have you on today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for letting me be here. I've enjoyed listening to the podcast as well.
Fun. Well, before we get off into all the wonderful topics we're going to talk about today, tell us just a little bit about your current life and here in Nashville and, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I live here in Franklin, Tennessee, and I travel a good amount. I do a lot of worship leading these days, so that's a lot of fun. I work a lot, so I'm kind of thankful when I get to travel sometimes because then I can work on only one thing at a time. But other than working, I love to just spend time hiking and spend time with friends. A lot of my hobby/free time is spent just chilling with friends and catching up with folks that I haven't seen in a while. So also love to cook. My favorite new cooking tool is the Instant Pot. So if you don't have one, you should get one, and you should go look it up immediately online.
What is that?
Oh, it's like this. It's a crock pot and pressure cooker all in one. And so you can do things like cook sweet potatoes in 12 to 15 minutes. Or
No kidding.
Dried
really?
beans in like 20 minutes. It's pretty amazing.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Can you get this like a Walmart or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably, but you can definitely get it on Amazon. That's where I got mine.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And what's it called?
The Instant Pot.
Instant Pot. I love that.
I need to see if I can do it like a sponsorship with them or
you
something.
Should.
I just talk about it all the time. It's so fun, though. It really is.
I think we just increased their sales today because I'm going to go buy one.
You totally should. It's so great. Well, especially if you're busy, but you want to eat healthy. And I had an experience last year where I had major surgery and all kinds of crazy, scary stuff. And so even though I wasn't a terrible eater before that, one of the things that came out of it was I really needed to do, basically paleo, just be gluten-free, dairy-free, just free, boring all the time.
know,
And so
right?
now it's like, this is a wonderful, easy way to do that. So you don't have to just warm up frozen stuff in the microwave all the time.
Wow. I'm really excited to hear that because my wife and I are on our 11th or 12th day of a particular diet that I won't mention.
The whole 30 or?
It's like, okay, I'll go ahead and say it's the Virgin diet. I think it's
okay.
JJ Virgin is the author. And it's kind of like, we've done Daniel fasting before for like 10 and 21 days. It really revolutionizes our spiritual life as well as our physical life. And
that's awesome.
The thing about the Virgin diet is it's 7 things that are poisoning your body, right? Like it's gluten, eggs, all dairy, soy, sugar.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more things. What are they? I can't think. But anyway, so we're in this halfway through like this 3-week first deal, right?
Oh wow!
And
it's really cool that you're speaking in complete sentences. I think after you start pulling all the stuff out of your diet that is yummy, right? Then it's like, oh, I can't think, I can't breathe.
I know, and we're
just
doing.
Sleep.
I know exactly. And we're doing like 2 smoothies a day and 1 meal. So I cheated yesterday and I had celery and almond butter for breakfast. Now tell me,
that is delicious. Almond butter on anything is quite delicious. Yes,
I know. No bread. Well, that's the gluten part. But anyway, it's like 7 things, and you cleanse and blah 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 all that. But anyway,
so delightful.
It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels
good. Congratulations.
Thanks. You too. So the Instant Pot, I'm going to go get that because we've been doing a lot of veggies and stuff. But
yes, you'll love it.
Well, yeah, we're not here to talk about all that, but
we digress.
I know, but I think that you said you enjoy cooking, and I do too. It's one of my primary hobbies, and do you think that creative people tend to like the diversion from, or maybe, those of us in music and this kind of thing, love that as a diversion?
I think so. I think it's good to, even as a creative person, to find other ways to be creative, just because it sort of helps you step away from, if you're a musician, which most folks who are listening probably are songwriters or musicians or both, then, finding another creative expression can just even, I think, enhance, the creative expression that you're most focused on. So, if you like to go do photography or cook or paint, I think just being inspired and, expressing yourself in as many creative ways as possible is always good, just for your creative process as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, there's that word whole and wholeness. I think people that are creative in their lives in general tend to be more creative in their songwriting and everything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah. My wife says I can do more with a bag of carrots than you could ever imagine.
Oh, that's so great.
I know, it's kind of fun,
That's not me. I have to know what the recipe calls for. I do not know how to be, I love doing it though. And I like, seeing what happens. That's one thing that's really fun. I think about making, bread or cakes or even stuff in the Instant Pot. You put a bunch of stuff in and you're like, what's going to come out, So it's very fun, but I am not intuitive about what should happen. So if you give me a bag of carrots, I'm like, what should we do with these?
Eat them. Just eat them.
Let's eat them. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's fun. Well, you've been at this music thing for 17 and a half years, you said. So take us back a little bit to kind of how this all started for you. Did you know that you wanted to do this? Now, let me back up and just state the obvious. You have been blind since age 3 or 4.
Yep. Since age 3.
So this has been a lifelong condition for you, and yet you found yourself now, all these years later, an extremely successful musician, singer-songwriter, recording artist. So how did this all happen? And I don't know, catch us up from the beginning there.
Yeah, so I came to Belmont University in Nashville. And I loved music growing up. I started playing piano at 2. We had one in our dining room, and I just fell in love with it, fell in love with playing by ear, but also took classical lessons, even though I was atrocious at practicing. And I started writing songs at around 7 or 8, and I was always involved in choir and band, but I was super shy. So I might play a song for people once a year. I might have a solo once or twice a year, but The only thing I wasn't shy about was saxophone because it was super loud. So when I played saxophone in junior high or middle school and high school, it was really fun because it was way louder than I could ever be, and it was much more reliable than my voice was, and it didn't shake. So I really enjoyed that musical expression, and I really loved music. I just couldn't figure out how to not be terrified on stage or to just, I had a pretty small voice. And so just, I don't know, could never grow much confidence in my ability to perform. And but I got a full scholarship to Belmont University, and so God literally just opened the door and flung me in it. It was not anything I was expecting. It's a really cool story of how it happened, but basically, instead of boring you with all those long details, I had a youth pastor that knew about Belmont and told me about it, and my mom and I were like, yeah, that's great, but it seems so far away. I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, so 7 hours away or 8.5 if my mom is driving. And so, but my youth pastor called them and found out about a scholarship that they had and encouraged me to apply for it. And I got it. And so I was pretty confident I was going to major in counseling or psychology and become a counselor, or major in, some sort of religion and become a youth pastor or something. Or just anything but music. I thought music would always be something I did on the side. And so it took about, 2 weeks for me to decide that music would be my major. So, it didn't take long at all. And God always has, a great sense of humor about these things. So I was a performance and music education major. And I, here in Nashville, everyone performs. And so I thought, there's really no way that my little songs would ever be of interest to people, but maybe I can keep, doing that on the side. And so I just thought I would be the coolest high school teacher, or not that I would be, but that was my goal, was to become the coolest, fun high school choir teacher. So I thought, well, if I can teach my kids how to read chord charts and number charts and how to sing background parts and stuff, and that would be really fun. So that was sort of the goal that I had for myself. Also, I didn't love the fact that, most people expect blind people to go into music because they kind of think that's all you know how to do. So I found after college, as I began applying for jobs, that people were pretty frightened at the idea of hiring a blind music teacher. And so I would meet with administrators, and they would, have received my resume and reached out for an interview. But then when they realized I was blind, which is naturally something I would not put on my resume, then they just freaked out, and it was super awkward. And so that happened quite a few times. And so I finally just, as I was continuing the interview process, I finally just accepted a job doing nonprofit telemarketing. So I would set up appointments with these big companies for nonprofit, presidents to go meet with them. Super awkward job for an introvert, but that was at least a job. So it was a very, hard season. It was a season in which I learned a lot about God and about faith, just because I was kind of like, okay, Lord, why have you brought me out here to wander with no job? And what am I doing? And so it was also during that time that I was asked to sing at church, which was kind of unusual. I went to a very large church and was involved in sort of the Sunday school program, the college ministry, but I didn't really ever sing there. So they asked me if I would sing it was Belmont Day. They were raising money for Belmont that day. So they asked me if I'd sing the offertory. So I sang a song I'd written. And there was a guy in the congregation who was an audio engineer and had worked on a good amount of records. And the next week I met him at church, and he said, have you ever thought of doing that for a living? Doing music, doing your own music for a living? And I said, well, of course I've thought of it, but so is everyone else in this town, and they're better
right.
and their voices are stronger, and they're not wimps on stage like me. So he said, well, I can't guarantee you anything, but why don't we record some of your songs, and then I will send them to people that that I know in the industry. And so I think we made 4 piano vocals, something like that. And he passed them around. And so as I was, interviewing for these teaching jobs and having my stressful nonprofit telemarketing job every couple months, which felt like forever in between, he would call and say, nothing's happened yet. Haven't heard anything back yet. And finally he called me one day, gosh, maybe 6 months later or 5 months. It wasn't even that long later, and said, I have a friend in publishing who would like to meet with you. So I remember kind of going through the whole, oh gosh, do I just tell him I'm blind, get it out of the way just in case that means he wouldn't want to meet, or what do I do? I didn't tell him. I showed up to meet, and that guy, Michael Purrier, ended up being my publisher for the next, 8 years, I think. So he was wonderful, and he said, I want to start sending you out to write with writers, and in a couple of months we'll see where we are, but I think that we'll sign you, and I think you'll have a record deal in I don't know, less than a year. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
That's awesome.
It's so funny. Like, I just had no idea. And God can definitely imagine much more for us than we can dream for ourselves. So that was definitely just a huge, exciting time. And I don't know, just I learned a lot. So I ended up about a year later signing with Rocketown Records, which was a label that Michael W. Smith had started a couple years earlier. So it was me and Chris Rice and Watermark, which is Nathan and Christy Knuckles, who have been with Passion for about 10 years now, I think. So it was us, and then and then Sean Groves came along, and so we just had so much fun. It was a very wonderful and very rare season in our industry where we all sort of were like-minded. We were all singer-songwriters, so we would do tours together, and we would, sit on stage and play music, each other's music together, and tell stories. Sort of, it's crazy. I mean, at the time we didn't realize it, but it's a little bit utopian, music world in the sense that, everybody's just kind of coming together and doing their thing and loving it. So it's really fun to look back on that. But anyway, I did that for a good amount of time. And about the time that I fulfilled my Rocketown contract was when downloading had started, and it was really hitting them and everyone else really hard. So they had started to sign, even some rock bands that had made their own records and just kind of doing some things that were not really on brand for them as they tried to recreate. But they were kind of going to close their doors, and I just decided to start making independent albums. And so started doing that and have been doing that ever since. So I've continued to have, distribution nationally, but just to make records on my own and have my own record label called Chick Power Music.
Love that.
Yeah.
Go Chick Power.
Chick Power, yeah.
Cool.
And then doing worship leading, and I taught at Belmont for a while in the songwriting department. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so just lots of adventure all the time.
That is great, Jenny. Well, let's go back a little bit because, man, that's rich. That's such a great testimony of coming here, going into music education, and yet, God had this plan for you all along to open up relationship with some of the most influential people in Christian music to this day, the people that you were cutting your teeth with back in that time. And you said utopian and kind of magical. It must have just felt amazing for your first venture out, your first album in 99, Without Condition, having the song that is, your signature song to this day, If You Want Me To. I mean, what an amazing song. I mean, do you ever get tired of singing that?
I did when it first came out because I wasn't used to singing anything over and over. So it was hard for a while, but now, no. I mean, I'm just, it's one of those songs that probably even means something different to me in every season. And so I'm just thankful people want to hear it. So yeah.
Well, it's just a classic. It's just one of those iconic songs of surrender. And you guys listening, if you don't know that song, you need to, and you've probably heard it along the way, but it's just one of the most tender, iconic kinds of songs about surrender that every time I hear it, it's fresh. And without going too deep into the next kind of segment of our conversation about your discography, you've refreshed it for your newest album that came out just last year. So how does that feel to kind of be revitalizing that?
Oh, it's so fun. Because when you keep having to listen to your own song and it's an old version, you're like, oh my gosh, we have to do something. We have to update it. We have to, make the production sound more current. So, I don't know if other people think that about it, but I definitely have a lot. So, and since it's a song that I continue to sing, I just thought, what would it sound like reimagined? So we did that for this album.
And you did it very, very well.
Thank you.
I love it because I love there's a classic feel to the first version from '99, but the reimagined version is also very fresh.
Thank you.
And feels very good. Well, maybe we should go ahead and talk about your catalog and talking about the experience of making these records and just kind of see where that conversation takes us. But that song set the stage, as far as I can see, for the. It was one of those career-building breakout kinds of songs, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, actually, Free was the first song that came out from that album, and it was actually a number one. And so what was funny was If You Want Me To was the song that people gravitated towards and liked. But when we released it to radio, I think it finally made it to number one for a week. But a lot of radio didn't want to play it because they were like, it's depressing. So it's such an interesting thing because it definitely wouldn't have gained traction without radio. I mean, there was a live version that we recorded at a Rocket Town show at the Hard Rock Live in Orlando, and a lot of stations played that. And so it was just piano vocal, and I was really surprised that people would play that. But the people that didn't want to play it just were pretty adamant about, just how heavy it was. I'm like, wow, you don't need surrender in your life. So yeah, it was, it's one of those songs that, I think people we all know this struggle to surrender, right? So I think that is why it has continued to have a life over the years. It's because we all know that that's part of just our journey of Christian faith is returning over and over to God and saying, not my will, but what you want.
Right. Well, that's just a constant if we're aware, right?
Right.
And then the self-examined life and just realizing that everything's not going to be cheerful and rosy all the time. Do you mind if I read a little bit of the lyric from that song?
Yeah, sure.
It's just so amazing. You guys, a lot of my audience are aspiring songwriters, as we said earlier. So, go look this lyric up. It's just awesome. The pathway is broken and the signs are unclear. And I don't know the reason why you brought me here, but just because you love me the way that you do, I'm going to walk through the valley if you want me to. And then, that's just a fantastic start right there, because I'm not who I was when I took my first step, and I'm clinging to the promise you're not through with me yet. So if all of these trials bring me closer to you, then I will go through the fire if you want me to. It may not be the way I would have chosen when you lead me through a world that's not my home. But you never said it would be easy. You only said I'd never go alone. So just such a sweet, tender surrender. And I don't know, I have to re-up every day. I don't know about you, but I have to get up and say, okay, God, I'm yours today.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
So did this come from a certain place or a certain experience?
Yeah, it did. It came from that whole season right after college where I was looking for a job as a teacher. And I think, my sort of, good church upbringing, taught me to just say, oh, well, God is teaching me whatever. God is teaching me surrender. God is teaching me to trust him, just sort of, which was not untrue, but it's a different thing to sort of say that because it's the rote thing, the thing that you've learned to say. and to actually believe that and understand. And so, a few months after saying that, I was sort of left going, okay, God, what exactly are you doing? I don't understand. And that was when he really began to teach me about surrender, and that faith truly means believing him, even if we can't see in what's ahead, and even if we can't control our circumstances, which we cannot. So I really began to have a true experience of, surrender and learning that walking by faith means not knowing what's even just ahead. So it was definitely about that experience.
Wow. Well, every now and then in a writer, artist's life, you land on a song like that. You land on something that is defining in so many ways, but for you as an artist, a singer-songwriter, but also that just reaches universally to people. And I think that's rare. So, wow, just thank you for that. Thank God for that. That's encouraged so many people in the whole idea of surrender, but also lament, that is so unpopular even till today, right?
Yeah, perhaps more unpopular today even. But it's so necessary. I mean, it's part of our journey. The Psalms are not, they're not happy, say for the whole family. They're prayers of complete joy and utter despair, and sometimes all of that wrapped into one. So I learn a lot and draw a lot of inspiration from how the psalmist wrote and how they prayed, just withholding nothing from God, and not holding back from embracing or experiencing what they were feeling. Just sort of laying it before him, owning it, and then perhaps walking away from it. I mean, just saying, I love over and over how the psalmists remind themselves of the gospel, or the truth. I suppose then it wouldn't have been the gospel, but they preach to themselves the truth that God is faithful, that he is always on his throne. And, they say things like, I will return to the sanctuary, or I will, Psalm 42 and 43, the psalmist, is in a super dark place, and he keeps coming back and he says, why are you so downcast, O my soul? Why are you so disturbed? But then he says, I will put my hope in God. I will praise him again, my Savior and my God. He says that 3 different times. So it's almost like there's, I will lay all these things. I will lament. I will place all of my heart before you. And then I will remind myself of the truth.
Wow. I think we have to do that, right? We have to preach the gospel to ourselves every day. Who said that? Who? I wonder who said that the first time. It's been around for a while.
It has been around for a while. Yeah. And I always look it up, and then I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, listeners can go look that up. But it's a great phrase, that we really need to remind ourselves. Now, I remember a quote from Luther who would say every day, I am baptized.
Yeah.
And I love that quote. To remember everything that the baptism really represents, as a believer each and every day, claiming the promises of salvation and of the presence of God in our lives, right? How do you do that?
Every day I have time in the morning that is set aside for just reading and meditating and praying. Because if I don't set aside the time, the day will run away and it will not happen. So I have learned over the last few years that's the way I have to do it. So it's usually 6 a.m. or 5:30 or something around that time, and I just talk to God. And I've really found a few tools that have helped me a lot. There's an app called Read Scripture that takes you through the Bible, and apparently it covers your whole screen on your phone, so you can't see all the notifications coming in from Facebook or whatever. But it's really great, and it's tied to there's a project called the Bible Project, which is these fabulous videos that intro.
I've seen them.
Yeah, every book of the Bible. They are brilliant.
They are brilliant.
Yes, so those are integrated in the app, and then also Francis Chan does a podcast that is also integrated into the app. So lots of resources there, just not just the reading, but also the resources that go along with it. So I love that. I also love reading, like this year I've been reading The Valley of Vision, which is a book of, I suppose the prayers are probably from like the 17th century, or maybe even, I suppose that would be right. So they're Puritan prayers, and maybe the 18th. I'm not exactly sure when all they're from, but I think it's more Puritan era. So they are beautiful, just absolute beautiful prayers. And sometimes even just those words inspire my prayers and inspire thought and things to consider about God that I haven't before. So just having that time to meet with God. I actually just wrote a 14-day Devo. I spent the summer writing that, which you wouldn't think it would take the whole summer to write 14 days of devotional, but it did. Because I feel like, in our noisy world, it's so hard to listen and to slow down and to think and to hear God. And, the reality is, if we wait for Sunday morning, singing our worship songs and hearing what the pastor has to say to be the time that we hear from God, we won't hear from him. And we won't hear from him often, and we won't be sure it's him if we do hear something. So, it's just like any other friend in the sense that the only way to know him, to know his heart, to know what's important to him, is to spend time with him every day and to really make space for that. So there's a verse in Psalm 25 that says that God tells us his secrets, like that he longs to tell us his secrets. And I love that just sort of the image that conjures in my head, just of God wanting to whisper the secrets of his truth, the secrets of eternal life, of, infinite hope with us. But we have to listen. And I just am amazed at how, as a culture, even as a Christian culture, we think we can do this without listening. And it's a similar idea, I think, when talking about the writing process. I teach about songwriting a lot, and just, you can't be a songwriter unless you show up to listen and to be creative all the time. It's also like a friend that will not be a comfortable relationship if you're not close to it, if you're not coming back and showing up to engage with it every day. So very different, I suppose, as far as God and art, but also a very similar approach, I think, to how we learn and grow in those ways.
Yeah, no, that's very rich. And to think, I say it like this, Ginny, that we bring all we are to the songwriting process, right? So if you are not a resourceful person, you're not going to bring resources to your songwriting. If you're not really in the Word, you're not going to bring the power of the Word to your songwriting. If you are conflicted, you're bringing conflict, and vice versa. If you're in the Word, if you're in a sense of surrender, if you are really listening, as you said a while ago, then you have more to bring to that whole process. And when you look back over 17 and a half years of being a recording artist and all that's happened, I think, this says in your bio that Love Be the Loudest is your 9th studio release, but haven't you done about like 13 or 14 records,
5 million
EPs?
albums? Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I've done some EPs and a Christmas album and a couple of Christmas EPs and a live album. Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff.
So as you look back, are there particular spiritual motivations and themes that you see, throughout this almost 20-year career?
Oh yeah, there's always the theme of surrender. So of the struggle to surrender. I feel like that is just something that maybe gets easier here recently, but has not been so easy for most of my life. Just surrendering to, surrendering control, especially. So that's one. I think just the freedom that we have in our relationship with Christ, in all that He gives us, and not only just the freedom from from sin and the freedom to anticipate eternal life, but also just the freedom to love others well because, we've been loved so well. And because, what do we have to hold on to? The freedom to embrace life fully because, we in Christ are fearless, can be fearless. So it's just all of those freedom to exercises that I feel like continue to mean so much to me. I tend to think too much, and I am definitely an introvert. So, I'm always fearful and a little bit shy and, maybe not always, but most of the time. So just even coming back and talking myself through all the things that Jesus has given me freedom to do has been a huge part of my journey as a writer.
Wow, that's great. You wrote something in your bio for this newest album. Most people think my greatest life challenge is blindness, but I've been blind since age 3. That simply isn't true. My greatest challenge is doing battle with the critical voices in my head, which is what you just said,
yes,
that distract me from what's most important. It's the whispers of those who feel sorry for me because of my physical challenge and don't think I hear their comments. That's so sad. I want to take them out. It's the shouts of my own doubts and insecurities asking, do you have anything valuable to contribute to society? Wow. When I look at your life and when I look at the discography and when I look at 17 and a half years of amazing recording, it's like, wow, you have brought such depth and richness to us through your music. And again, I think I said this earlier in the show, but when I am having an artist or anyone, a guest on the show, I really try to go back and do a lot of research. And I knew your hits, I knew the big songs, but I have discovered depth, not only of heart, but there is a breadth of music and style. And you've had some pop music success. You played at Lilith and at Sundance, and you're a deep well girl. There's a lot to there's a lot to you. So
I'm gonna call you every day when I need encouragement.
Yes, you can. Here's myself. But when I listen back, and there's such a blend of. There's everything from now your new kind of dance pop, Love Be the Loudest record, which is stinking amazing. The Fire is great. And you worked with some fabulous people on that. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But your musical palette is broad and eclectic, and you do everything from acoustic. This new song, let me pull it up real quick. I can't play it or anything, but on the new record, let's see, oh gosh, it's so awesome. It's the one where it's just the acoustic, the electric guitar.
Made for Loving You?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So you got, but on all of your albums, there is everything that's from a little bit jazzy, to acoustic, to full-blown pop. There's just a lot there. Talk a little bit about the breadth of just how you think about music.
I love music. I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. And my parents loved hymns, but also very high church music. So my parents like to tell the story of me being 2 years old and standing up on the front pew during choir practice while the choir was rehearsing the Hallelujah chorus and saying, "You're not singing it right. This is how it goes." So there was that space of sort of high church and hymns and just the rich heritage that our church culture brings musically, which I just believe it's really rich lyrically, melodically, all of that. And I still draw from the beauty of that. And so there was that. But then growing up in Jackson, I also I went to a school that was probably 80 to 90% African American. And so my friends taught me a lot about music, and that, in order for music to be truly rich, it should possess some soul. And so part of expressing your heart is having some soul there. And so I loved gospel music as well as, R&B. And that probably shaped me a significant amount, as did Amy Grant. Especially, I remember as a 7-8-year-old listening to her first albums and really just loving. I probably couldn't have described it then, but just the humility and the sort of simple, beautiful lyrics that she crafted, and I don't know, just the way that she expressed herself in this very humble, gentle way, and I think there was something about that really moved me. So I loved singer-songwriter, but I also loved gospel and R&B and hymns. And then when I got to college, it was about the time that people like Sarah McLachlan were coming on the scene, and then Sheryl Crow and John Mayer. And so I fell in love with songwriting as well. So honestly, having sort of a diverse palette, I guess, has also been a challenge at times. I think it's caused me not to stick in a box, which probably sometimes would be helpful for my career if I could stick more in a box.
Right. Yeah.
So because I just love it all. I even now just the worst thing about streaming services is that I have just like the rest of the world learned to have ADD. And so I listen to a song or half a song and then I skip to another artist and listen to another song. And I'm like, no, this is just what I don't, as an artist, this is just what we don't want people to do. But I love diversity. And so my music libraries are pretty oddly diverse. And well, I think we all have that, but I literally might have like a Sam Hunt album and then I don't know, the new Ty Trivet album or something.
Right,
so It's pretty crazily diverse. But I love that. I mean, I love music, and I think as writers, it helps us to know a lot of music and to hear different things in a lot of music. But then I can also see on the other side of that, honing our craft by, picking only one path to follow. So I don't really know what the answer is on that. I just love music.
Well, listen, I mean, you blend it all together so amazingly well, from the gospel R&B, which makes sense now that you've described, your background in school and everything, but all the way through to the tender ballads, and up to this kind of, I don't think you'd call the new album gospel R&B, but there might be some influence there, but definitely dance pop, very, very current. You've worked with some amazing people, Josh Braunlouis, Chad Copeland, and Rusty Varenkamp. And I love this. I can't wait to listen to this again and again. So tell us a little bit about that experience and bring us real current with your record there.
Yeah. So I, especially when I'm doing my workout, I love to listen to either Spotify or Apple Music playlists of what's current. As a songwriting instructor, it helped me to, know what people were hearing, what my students were listening to. But it also helps me as a writer to just hear the sounds that other people are hearing and sort of where melodies are going and rhythms and things like that, because they're different than when I started. When I first began my musical journey, singer-songwriter was, it just sounded different than singer-songwriter does now.
Right,
there wasn't quite the amount of auto-tune and such that there is now. It's just a button on your computer. So I love, and there's a lot of music that I've fallen in love with. I mean, everything from Ed Sheeran to Taylor Swift to some Chainsmokers songs here and there.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I even just as a person who needs all the positive influence I can get, and also as a person who is a person of faith, man, those lyrics, I find a steady diet of that is just not, it's not great. It's not great for my brain.
Yeah.
And so part of my goal with this new album was to capture some of the fun sentiment and the fun sounds that I was hearing in songs that I loved, but to write lyrics that were deep and meaningful and thoughtful about what it means to, allow God's voice to be loudest in our lives. And it was a challenge in many ways because when you are, getting really, the more pop you write, the more precise you have to be with your rhythms and melodies, right? So, and the shorter spaces you have to put words in. So it was hard. We labored a lot over how to do that. But I worked with some wonderful writers on that process, which was really, really cool. I worked with, the producers you mentioned. Josh and I have written for the last few years together, he and Benji Cowart and I, which has been a whole lot of fun. I love just with those two, I can go in and say, here's this idea I've been wrestling with, and they can take what could end up being, a singer-songwriter, heavy, dark idea and making it something that is still weighty, but is accessible. And perhaps more hopeful as well. So it's really been fun to do that. I also got to work with Ellie Holcomb. She and I wrote a song, and then I asked her if she'd be willing to sing it with me. And then the same with Mike Weaver of Big Daddy Weave. We wrote a song, and then as we were putting the album together, I just thought, man, it'd be great to have him sing on this song. So, and then also All Sons and Daughters. I've known Leslie and David for a while, and they're awesome. So I had sort of rewritten and added some words to a hymn that I found that I didn't find a melody for. And so they graciously agreed to sing it with me. And so it was really fun to just have all the collaborations, and but to also, I guess, jump into some waters that I have not treaded in before, and to really just enjoy kind of a pop space for a minute. I think everybody that's a singer-songwriter should do that at one point or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it certainly brings you current in a whole lot of ways and makes it's like, okay, this is as current and fresh as anything out there right now.
Thank you.
Sound great. I mean, it is totally awesome to hear. You don't sound too auto-tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so
it's
much.
Perfect. Now, how do you say the guy's name that sang with you on Made for Loving You?
Andrew Bergthold.
Bergthold, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, what a track. I love that. It's so stripped down, and you just, it's so very cool. You have Meredith Andrews, Andrew Greer, and you mentioned Mike Weaver and All Sons and Daughters. So it's just a great record. Talk to us a little bit about your song process. I mean, you teach songwriting, so you obviously are way up on the process. How does it work for you?
Well, I have lots of voice memos, I think close to 1,000. From the years. I never get rid of any. Well, I get rid of them, but there's still more. So the beautiful thing about having a voice memo app on your phone is you can just record, your song thoughts. The curse of that is that you have all these random song thoughts, and then you have to go back through them. So I write notes a lot in my song file, and then I have all these voice memos. So that's usually sort of the seed of a song it's somewhere in there. And then usually I will finish melody and chords and then come back and labor over the lyrics. I find that lyrics take me, at least saying what I want to say takes me a good amount of time, weeks, hours, days, months, years even. Sometimes there's a few songs that just take a few years to be written. So what I really enjoyed about this process was a lot of the collaborations, someone would be creating a track as we were writing this song. So it was fun to sort of have that come together. And lyrics still were always the thing that took the longest. We generally didn't finish a complete lyric in one setting, but we'd finish most of one. So it was fun to have to co-write and kind of to let my guard down and let people in on the things that I was thinking about, especially as I came to see them as trusted writers. I always tell songwriters to, be careful and hold back on ideas that you really love if you don't know or aren't comfortable yet with the people that you're writing with. But if you do know them, then don't be fearful of sharing your ideas, So it was very fun to have just a collaborative process especially on this record, just usually when I write, it's just piano and me, sitting down by myself. And so to have, tracks being created in the background and and all that. It was really, really fun to write to, a music bed that was already going on. So, and even in that process, though, we would usually come up with a melody or a feel before the track was very far along, so that the track didn't dictate that. But I feel like probably as it is for a lot of people, creating a track or creating chords and melody is much easier than the lyric.
Yeah, right. I mean, so true. True, awesome lyricists are just few and far between.
Yes,
right?
I've always been amazed by people like Tony Wood who just write a whole lyric.
Yeah,
and I'm like, how do you do that?
We've had him on the show. 29 number one hits and counting.
It's just nuts.
I hate him.
I know.
I mean, come on,
but
guy.
He's a brilliant example of somebody that just shows up every day. He has office hours and he does it. He works at his art, it's his job. So, and it is his job.
His one thing, there's a book that I'm actually listening to on Audible called The One Thing. And Tony is one of those examples of someone who has pressed in to his one thing and I love the guy. He's great. But so now you've got this great new record. It just came out a year ago, but you've got some other things that you're passionate about and are doing. You mentioned earlier the 14-day devotional series. Now, where do we find that?
GinnyOwens.com.
There, right on your site. Okay.
Yes, it just was released. So very excited to finally have that out.
Awesome. So it's the kind of thing where you just start your day with this devotion. Is it recorded or just you read it?
So it's right now it's an ebook. So there's a scripture and then sort of a story and a meditation and a little sort of activity at the end of every day to help, kind of further what it is that we've talked about in the Devo. So,
right. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And then I know you have a series of videos called How I See It. And I found them on YouTube and watched some of them, and they're awesome.
Thanks.
Tell us about that.
Well, it kind of came to my attention a few years ago because I don't talk a lot about not being able to see because, it doesn't really have anything to do with the music. So I found out that people had a lot of questions that they weren't ever comfortable asking. Like, how do you, match your clothes or put on makeup? So I started to experiment with creating videos that explain to people how I did stuff. And it's been really fun, just the dialogue that it spurred on Facebook, from maybe parents who have young children who have disabilities and are so thankful to know that, their kids can grow up and be adults who, contribute to society and who are then fully capable of taking care of themselves. So it's also been fun to hear from other people with blindness or other disabilities about how they get things done. So it's been a really great, conversation starter, and it's even, of course, inspired more questions from people. So we have lots more videos to make. But yeah, it's been so fun.
I think you need to do one about how to be a nice person on Facebook.
Oh, goodness. Just stay off Facebook. That's the best way. Gosh.
Just don't go there.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's really crazy. It's like if you wouldn't stand and have a conversation with someone where you said all these things, then don't write it out. Don't do it.
Right? Man, haters.
Yes.
I think there are more Christian haters. I think that's an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
It's like Christian haters. Wait, that doesn't really work. You'll know them by their love, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, wow. Well, this has been rich, Ginny. I'm so blessed and honored to have you on the show today. Before we kind of wrap up, do you have any parting wisdom or thoughts for the writers that are listening today?
Oh, sure. I would just encourage you guys to, even if it's 5-10 minutes a day, show up and spend time creating. Maybe it's writing, just journaling your thoughts. Maybe it's playing your instrument. But it's a way to become deeper, closer friends with your art. And as we've talked about before, it's imperative that you spend time each day, with your creator. And I know it sounds a little bit cliche to say, but as we talked about, that is, that deepens your well, and the well is what you draw from when you are creating, but it's also just how you know where to go next. What step to take next is if you spend that time with God. So those are the most important things that I think we should do as creatives.
Wow. That's a good word for everybody listening. And no matter what it is, to build your life from that place of I like what you said, being friends with your art, being better friends, that's great. So being better friends with God and with the Holy Spirit. So, well, I want to take just a moment as we kind of wind this down to just acknowledge you, to just thank you for the amazing contribution that you've made to hymnody, to contemporary Christian music, to the body of Christ, through all the songs, all the recording, all the traveling, all the backstage conversations, all the moments of prayer for people that you've encountered that have moved your heart, but just for the Spirit of God moving through you, Ginny, in a way that has made the world a better place. And I just want to acknowledge that, because maybe sometimes you get into a place like we all do, thinking, oh, gee, 17 and a half years, but how many more? Does anybody care? What am I, all those, the self-doubts we talked about earlier in the show. But you're precious and amazing, and we just want to acknowledge and bless you and thank you and pray with you for 17 and a half more years of just the most amazing music and ministry. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun. Well, tell us as we wrap up, what are your favorite ways for people to interact with you and get the devotion and on the website and all that kind of stuff?
For sure. So Facebook is Ginny Owens Music, and there's lots going on over there all the time. And I do try to respond to messages. So if you have questions for me, that is the easiest place to ask them. Twitter is at Ginny Owens. I also try to respond there. And it's GINNY, just by the way, just in case you're listening to this and you don't know. And then GinnyOwens.com is the website where you can find all the stuff and things. And then, and Instagram is Blind Chick Photog, because why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Fun time.
Well, thank you again, Ginny. You guys listening, be sure and connect with Ginny on all the social media and check out this devotional. I'm sure it's awesome. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to go get it myself.
Sweet.
The How I See It videos, if there's someone in your life that would benefit from that, just go love it anyway, because they're great. And then just check out her music, this great new album, Love Be the Loudest. And Ginny, it's been rich. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see you around town.
Okay.
Thanks for being here today for the Song Revolution podcast from Nashville Christian Songwriters. We exist to empower you and to bring you some of the greatest inspiration, insights, and important people from the Christian music world to help you write your best and to be heard as the songwriter that you were born to be. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us over on Twitter and Instagram, and connect with us through our Facebook group called Successful Christian Songwriters. Until next time, I'm John Chisum, calling you to a Song Revolution.